"Wake up, little sister," said an annoying, condescending voice that could have roused a corpse. "It's after 7 and you're officially late."
Ugh. Damn it, Ray.
"It's Saturday," groaned Maria Jones as she held a pillow over her head to block out the morning sun. "I don't care. I've got work. You've got errands. So long as you're living in your generous, loving sister's condo, you're going to stick to a schedule." Maria closed her eyes and buried her face in the arm of the couch, which also happened to be her de facto bed. She tried willing her hard-ass older sister out of existence, but it was no use. She offered no mercy, pulling the blanket off her and ripping the pillow out of her grip. It was mornings like this where she hated that she'd inherited her mother's looks while her Rachel got dad's strength. Hit with a face full of sun and an older sister's penetrating gaze, Maria groaned as she pulled herself up from the couch. Wearing a dirty t-shirt, old sweatpants, and the same underwear she'd worn to work for the past 3 days, she felt about as rested as a hungover hobo. In some respects, it was a fitting metaphor for her life at this point. "You must really hate me, Ray," Maria said as she rubbed the sleep out of her eyes. "I know I suck as a sister, having to crash at your place after fucking my life up in ways that are entirely my fault. Enough with the guilt trip, Sarah." "You know I don't hate you," Rachel replied, rolling her eyes at her, "but even you have to admit you need a kick in the ass these days. It's bad enough you dropped out of college to hook up with that high school crush of yours. But between staying with a guy after he cheated on you and letting him burn through your college fund on that failed video game company of his, you've got no high ground to stand on." "For your information, it was a software company," Maria muttered, as though that much had hurt any less. "Doesn't matter what it was. The point is now you're waiting tables, your credit is shit, and you wasted mom and dad's charity when you tried to get a payday loan on their car. Which I apologized for 1,000,000 times, by the way," said Sarah. "Too late for that. Mom and dad gave you leeway, and it burned them. I've worked hard and exercised infinitely better judgment than you, so I'll give you none. You want my help getting your life back together. This is the price you pay." Maria felt inclined to cuss her sister out until next Christmas, but that only would have made her smugger, and she couldn't have that. She'd done enough to screw herself over these past few years. Avoiding eye contact with Rachel, Maria pulled herself up from the couch and did her best to wake up. She tried fixing her messy hair and wrinkled clothes, but at this point in her life, she could only do so much to feel presentable. Having once been the hottest girl in school who had every opportunity given to her, all her bad decisions just made her feel ugly by default. As Maria did what she could to look somewhat less pathetic, Rachel retrieved her purse and keys from the kitchen table. She was already dressed in her overpriced pantsuit, ready to pull some overtime at the law firm she'd been working at for the past 5 years. Between her makeup and more professional demeanor, it was painfully obvious which one of them had made the better life choices. "I've left a list of errands on the fridge next to the wine where I know you'll see it," Rachel said as she checked herself in the mirror near the door. "I need you to go to the DMV to pick up the license plate for my new Mazda, swing by the farmer's market to pick up supplies for the firm's annual meeting, coordinate with the building manager open house in the unit across the hall, and take care of that big stack of laundry that's still sitting in my bedroom." "That all sounds like very important work," Maria said dryly. "Want me to learn Mandarin and do your taxes while I'm at it?" "Whatever you can do that'll keep you on schedule and not making dumb decisions is fine by me," her older sister replied. "Just do what I ask and I'll have no reason to kick you out. It's that simple." "Simple, right?" Maria scoffed. She'd heard that before. Those 3 words in that particular order might have been her least favorite words of all time. That was what her ex-boyfriend told her when he told her about some get-rich-quick scheme he'd conjured. That was what she told herself when she dropped out of college to pursue what she thought would be a less complicated life. Every time she heard or said those words, it led to another poor decision that she came to regret. Rather than risk hearing those words again, Maria dragged herself to the kitchen in search of something to wake her up. As annoyingly regimented as her sister was, Maria couldn't afford to push her buttons. If her sister kicked her out, then there would be nowhere left to go. "Well, if I'm going to run off and be your personal errand." "Girl, I'm going to need some coffee," she said. "Sorry, but this is the last batch," said Rachel, holding up her travel mug as though it were a trophy. "Please tell me you're joking," Maria groaned. Please tell me you're just trying to kick my ass into gear again. I promise I won't get mad this time. Sorry, but when you're busy and have a functional career, certain things slip your mind. Guess you'll have to get some from the new neighbor across the hall, and hope he's a morning person. Are you ever going to get tired of punishing me for being such a bitch in high school? If I do, I'll let you know if I do, Rachel replied smugly. Have a great day, little sis. Maria shot her older sister a harsh scold, but she barely saw it. She was already out the door, on her way to drive her nice new Mazda to her well-paying job while her broke sister relied on public transportation to do all the menial chores she'd been given. It used to be so much easier to hate her sister, but Maria just made it harder on herself with every bad decision, it seemed. With Rachel gone, Maria buried her tired face in her arms and muttered a string of curses that would have gotten her arrested if she'd said them in public. She would have loved to just crawl back on the couch, fall asleep, and try to regain whatever strength she could for her next shift at the restaurant. Unfortunately, her uptight older sister had given her a lot to do. If she wanted to even have a couch to sleep on, she had to get to work and pretend she wasn't too miserable. To do that, however, she needed coffee. There was no way she could be that alert on a Saturday morning without it. Not having the extra money for a latte, she decided to take her sister's advice and check with the new neighbor across the hall of her sister's condo. If she were lucky, he or she wouldn't ask her to flagellate herself for extra creamer. Not bothering to put on less scruffy clothes, she walked out the front door and to the condo across the hall. Still too tired to give too many damns about waking someone up, she knocked on the door. Please don't be a mean, vindictive bitch who makes me feel like shit, she said under her breath. Just once, let me meet someone who doesn't bust my ass for being a fuck-up. Maria hoped for the best, but prepared for the worst. Knowing her luck, the neighbor was a friend of Rachel's who conspired with her to make her sister miserable. Much to her surprise, though, the person that answered didn't look like a vindictive bitch. In fact, and it might have been the grogginess talking, it looked like a handsome, attractive man with dark hair, a light beard, and no shirt to conceal a very masculine, very fit physique. Good morning, he greeted. Can I help you with some things? Maria stammered, suddenly feeling stupid for wearing such unflattering clothes. Are you okay? He asked her. Coffee, she said, her brain finally working again. Do you have any coffee? I'm kind of out, and... She kept stammering like a drunk prom date, which was saying something because she was used to being the one that made the opposite sex stammer. The man, who must have been a very understanding prom date, just laughed and opened the door. Sure, I have coffee, he said. Come on in. I just brewed a pot. Thanks, said Sarah. I really appreciate it. I'm having a rough morning. I can tell, he said as he made his way to the kitchen. Rough night. More like rough life for the past 5 years. Well, coffee won't fix it, but it'll help. Maria laughed. He didn't say anything particularly funny, but she still laughed. It felt good to laugh, though. She hadn't been able to laugh much these past few years. Screwing up and making bad decisions had that effect on someone's sense of humor. Who knew that being around a handsome man could heal it so quickly? Trying to regain what little composure she had to begin with, she followed the handsome man into the room. Near as she could tell, he had just moved in. Everything was still messy. There were boxes, pictures, and pieces of furniture strewn everywhere. However, it didn't strike her as the reckless kind of messy. It came off as a productive kind of mess, the kind that hinted at a man who had his shit together. You'll have to forgive the mess, the man said. I just moved in yesterday, and I'm still unpacking. There's nothing to forgive. I've seen, lived, and made bigger messes than this, Maria said.
Wow.
It sounds like you've had an interesting life, Miss Sarah, she said. Maria Jones? Nice to meet you. I'm Petter Holt. I'm not new to this county, this state, or this county, but I am new to this condo. It's actually the first condo I've ever had, not to mention the first home of my own that I've ever had. Damn. Then this mess is deceptive, she joked. It sounds like you've got your shit together, Petter. Trust me, I'm still behind the curve. Maria had a hard time believing you'd believe that for a woman you just met. What can I say? I have a good feeling about you. He moved in a little closer when he said those words, giving Maria a good whiff of his manly scent. He smelled like he hadn't showered, but had a long night and worked up a hell of a sweat. It was the kind of musk that sent every womanly instinct into overdrive. Not since her junior prom had her loins been so inflamed, and that had been in an overpriced dress. At that moment, Maria found herself making a decision that might either be a big mistake or the first genuinely right decision she'd made in a long time. Petter, I know I just met you, and you just placed a lot of faith in a woman who just drank your coffee, Maria said, but I need to know one more thing. Okay, I'll do my best to answer, he said, sounding intrigued and maybe a little flirtatious. If I kissed you right now with my morning breath, and maybe wanted a little more than that, would you stop me? The handsome man who'd welcomed her into his new home with coffee and hope grinned at her. She swore his smile lit up her broken soul like a Christmas tree. He must have been a morning person because he set his coffee mug aside and moved in closer, giving him a bigger taste of his manly presence.
No.
I wouldn't stop you, he said in a deep, manly tone. In fact, I'd encourage you. Good, said Sarah. Because that's exactly the encouragement I need right now. With more energy than she'd ever had this early in the morning, Maria threw her arms around Petter and captured his lips in a hard, messy kiss. His breath still smelled like coffee and toast. Hers probably smelled worse. She didn't care, and neither did he. Within seconds, their lips and tongues were entwined and eager. From that kiss came more intimate touching. She eagerly explored his exposed upper body while he felt up her hips and waist. The fact he didn't seem to mind her overly casual attire only made him more attractive in her eyes. As they kissed and touched, she found herself leading him to a couch covered in unopened boxes. Along the way, she slid off her shirt and took off her pants, leaving her in a pair of cotton panties. He followed suit, stumbling a bit as he pulled down the loose-fitting pants he'd probably worn to bed last night. Together, they fell on the messy couch, laughing and kissing in a playful outburst of morning lust. Oh, Petter, encourage me. Embolden me, Maria said curtly. Yes, ma'am, Petter said eagerly. Like a man on a mission, he shoved aside some empty boxes to give them more room. Then, he swiftly removed her panties, leaving her fully nude on his couch. Showing the kind of drive she could only envy, he pushed her legs apart and went down on her, gorging on her pussy and filling her with blissful sensations that roused her more than all the coffee in the world. So encouraging, she purred. The man had been hungry for more than breakfast. He must have worked up quite an appetite because she noticed him taking off his boxers while eating her out, revealing a very appetizing endowment. Maria had encountered men with a propensity for morning wood, but never like this. Sarah, ready to feel bolder? He finally asked her after getting her pussy nice and wet. Hell yeah, she answered without hesitation. With burning intent, Petter shot up from the floor and got on top of her. Maria eagerly spread her legs, welcoming him onto the couch so that he was right on top of her. She even showed off a little flexibility, hitching her legs up over his shoulders so he could enter her with ease. Once in position, he delivered a single thrust and in an instant, her hot flesh parted and welcomed him into her domain. Oh, Petters! Maria cried out. From that blissful proclamation on, her world rocked. She felt his powerful grip on her hips as he delivered a steady succession of thrusts, working his rigid manhood within her depths. It was so smooth and seamless, as though her body had been waiting for something like this, the feeling to make her feel stronger, bolder, and more determined to rebuild her life. The fact it felt so fucking good was a nice bonus too. As Petter made love to her, Maria passionately raked her nails along his back, feeling the manly sinews of his upper body. There was such strength in his flesh, a strength that had helped him rebuild his wreck of a life. Now, here he was, making love to her. Maybe some of that strength would be imparted to her. Whether that happened or not remained to be seen. She'd just settle for great sex and a damn good orgasm. That ended up happening sooner than she'd expected. Together, they rocked his couch under the light of the morning sun, their naked bodies moving together in a harmonious union. His touch, his breath, and his sex sent her down a path of ecstasy, one that culminated in the most satisfying climax she'd had in a long time. Fuck, she gasped. I'm coming, Petter. I'm going to come. Me too. Oh, Sarah, Petter moaned. The pace of their sex accelerated. His hips moved faster, and her body rocked harder. After a few focused movements, he sent her over that special threshold that separated her from her blissful peak. When it happened, Maria clenched his shoulders, closed her eyes, and threw her head back in a cry of euphoria. White-hot pleasure soon followed, the orgasmic sensations rippling from head to toe. Along with that pleasure came a strength that she didn't usually associate with sex, although she wouldn't mind making such a connection. As she enjoyed her pleasure, Petter got his. She couldn't tell exactly when it happened. She just sensed it when his grip on her hips tightened, his grunts intensified, and his powerful manhood throbbed inside her, his pleasure echoing hers. Even while in her orgasmic daze, she took the time to admire the contentment in his eyes. It was the look of a man who appreciated the struggle of rebuilding a broken life. In him, she saw someone who had walked the path she'd been trying to walk. In her, she hoped he saw someone who was eager to catch up. As the orgasmic sensation settled, he lingered on top of her. Their bodies remained entwined in a naked heap, his hands still roaming her exposed flesh, while she caressed his rugged complexion. Thank you, Petter, Maria told him. Thank you for encouraging me, for making me feel like I can rebuild my life. Oh, and thanks for the coffee. You're welcome, Petter laughed, and thank you for the morning sex. I think I'm going to like being your new neighbor. Me too.